All right, guys, we're going to be talking about radians on the unit circle today. And first, what we're going to do is take a second to define what a radian is. Okay, so a radian is simple. It is the arc length that is equal to one radius on the unit circle. And if we think about the unit circle has a radius of 1 unit. Okay, so as we think about that, if we look at our diagram over here, we have a circle that has a radius on here. Okay, and we want to look at what 1 radian is. Well, that's nice and easy. 1 radian is equal to 1 radius. So you can see that that red arc right there is what 1 radian is. So the question is, well, how many radians are there in a circle? So how many radians are there in a circle? Well, we can go ahead and add that on and say, okay, well, let's go. Well, there's a second radian right there. So we have 2 radians. We have 3 radians. Okay, if we keep going around, each one of these are equal to 1 radius. Okay, we have 4 radians. Okay, we have 5 radians, and then we have 6 radians. So when we look at this, we have, let's go ahead and mark this down, 1 radian, 2 radians, 3 radians, 4 radians, and 5 radians, and 6 radians. But what you're going to notice is that there's a little bit more that should be here. There's a little piece that we are missing. Well, what is that missing piece? Okay, well, if we think about what we're doing is we're traveling around a circle, or we're looking at the circumference of the circle. Okay, and the circumference of a circle is simple. We find it by saying C equals to 2 pi r. And in this case, the radius is 1, so we're actually looking at 2 pi times 1, which is just 2 pi. Well, what is 2 pi? Well, if we multiply 2 times pi, that gives us 6.28. So that is going to give us the value of 6.28. And notice what that is. There are 6 radians and a small fraction of a 7th. Well, that fraction is 0.28 or 28% of the radius. Okay, so in actuality, how many radians are there in a circle? There are 2 pi radians in a full circle. And what that means is that there are 6.28 radiuses that can travel around the entire circle. So with that being said, how can we figure out other radians along this circle? So let's go ahead and clear a little bit of some of this out. Okay. And let's find out how we can figure out other things. Well, what we just determined was that if we were to start at 0, and there's 360 degrees in it, well, we know that if we go all the way around the circle, there are 2 pi radians. Well, what if we only went half of the circle, or to 180 degrees? Well, if we went to 180 degrees, we would go pi, or 3.14 radians. Well, how can we look at that and make sure that that makes sense? Well, I can turn on 1, 2, 3, and notice there is, again, just a little chunk that we are missing, okay? And that's how we could figure out that there is that. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and find out some more. So we have 2 pi at 360 degrees. We have 180 degrees, which is pi. what do we know about 1 or at 90 degrees? Okay, so at 90 degrees, which is that way, okay, we could say, well, we know that there's pi here. Well, we could cut that in half and we could say, well, pi over 2. Well, what is pi over 2? Okay, so we can come type that in, pi divided by 2. That's 1.57 radians, so 1.5 radians. Well, let's just go ahead and check that. If I turn on my radians, notice what happens. Okay, I have 1 radian, and I have my second one, and it gets cut right about in half. So there is about 1.57 radians. Okay, well, what if I wanted to go, let's say, to 45 degrees? Okay, let's say I wanted to go to 45 degrees. Well, one thing I do know is that I could take pi over 2, which is 90 degrees, and I could cut it in half. And I could say, well, pi over 2 times a half, it's going to be pi over 4. So 45 degrees would be pi over 4. Well, what does that mean? And that'd be pi over 4 radians. Remember, you can see it right here, that 1 radius is the red that is showing from here to here. Pi over 4 should be less than that 1 red. So if I come down here and I say, well, what is pi over 4? Pi over 4 is 0.78, or roughly about 75 to 80% of that radius. Now, my last question is, well, how many degrees is 1 radian? So how many degrees is 1 radian? We want to make that relationship because sometimes it just makes life easy when we think about it in terms of degrees. Well, we know that there's 360 degrees in a full circle. And we know that in that full circle, there are 2 pi, or 6.28 radians. So what I'm going to do is take 360 degrees and divide it by the 2 pi radians. That'll give us how many each one is. So let's do that real quick. Take 360 and I divide it by 2 pi. Okay, that is 57.3 degrees. So roughly 1 radian is about 57.3 degrees. And what that simply just means is that if I was to draw from the center of our circle out to the end of 1 radian is approximately 57.3 degrees. Hope that helps understand the basic idea of what a radian is and how they relate to the full circle.